Hey everybody, this is Gaynor Milky for Moving the Needle, Digital Transformation in the Accounting Profession, and I'm joined by John Higgins, my co-host. Hey John, how are you?
Hi, Gaynor. Yeah, I'm doing well. Enjoying the summer here in beautiful Michigan. That's one of the nice parts about Michigan is our beautiful summers, right?
That's right. And then we have beautiful fall and then we have beautiful winter. So
Yeah.
it's all good. But today we're doing a kind of special edition of Moving the Needle to talk about conferences and what we've both seen as we've been around kind of midway through traditional conference season. But we were just talking about mental health and technology. So we thought that's definitely been a hot topic both at conferences and online. So we talk about that a little bit. So John, from your perspective, the firms that you're talking to and what you've seen over the past, you know, evolution of a few decades, like where do you think the mental health conversation is going, or and how is technology impacting that?
Yeah, so I think that as we are kind of talking offline, that because I've been around for 40 years in the profession, I don't think the workload is any more difficult than it's ever been. Uh, the factors that would lead to burnout, and everybody deals with it in their own way, good or bad. Uh, but I certainly think that the newer generation of professionals is being a lot more vocal about it and talking more about it. And so then the question is, well, so what does technology role? What role does technology play? And I think it's good and bad, right? I think the bad is that we're just glued to our screens, whether it's at the office or on our mobile devices, and that screen is like controlling our lives. I'm being a little dramatic about it, but I think it is.
That's not dramatic. I think that's completely fair and sad at the same time. Yes.
Yeah, so it's like all you got to do is walk around. You walk around like a conference. I was at the Engage conference, which is a great conference. We'll talk about AICPA's biggest conference, and everybody's walking around, a lot of networking, but people are in the sessions. But in the sessions, vast majority of people are looking at their phones. And I got to admit, I even took a couple of the sessions because you can do it virtually or or in person. There was a couple of times I did the session on my phone in my hotel room because to get from my room to the session was just, I said, I'll just do it here, right? It was actually easier. And so that's kind of the bad side is we just get, and it's going to get worse because with AI now, they say that some of the AI experts say that are the best friend of like the kids that are growing up today that are in, say, elementary school, their best friend will be virtual, be a
Oh, please
virtual
don't tell me
friend.
that.
Yeah. So think about that. Um, I was reading a little article on the Wall Street Journal last week, and there's people that are buying like $10,000 virtual babies. Instead of having a baby or instead of getting a dog, they're buying these virtual babies and they're like $10,000. So
So what do you do with a virtual baby?
you
Like,
treat it like a real baby, right? Because you can feed it, and I don't really know. I just read the article. I was like, what? This is crazy.
yeah.
Like they
Well,
buy strollers for them and stuff.
oh my gosh, anything to make a buck, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think from my perspective, totally agree with you that, the screens, if you let them, are going to dominate your life. And I think, you know, we've talked a little bit now about all the negatives, and I'm definitely myself very cognizant of trying not to always be on my phone. And I've actually noticed that other people are doing that, being more intentional.
Hmm.
Um, but there's always like I think it just comes down to how conscious you are about it, and
Yeah.
what do you want your life to look like? Like, do you want your life to be virtual babies, or do you want your life to be connecting with real humans, which is, I think going to bring a shift back into, the real time for a number of reasons. And I think it's also like from a practitioner perspective, going to make the real practitioner client relationship and meetings and advisory even more valuable because it's going to become less common, right? And I
Yes.
think there's still a trust. I mean, we talk about trust all the time in the profession, but the trust factor, not only of the technology, like I could go to ChatGPT and say, give me like 10 tax planning tips or whatever, but I'm not going to upload, as we've talked about, my tax return into, kind of any old software. And even if I did, am I going to trust that that really is, taking into account everything about me? And so I think that the technology is going to make interpersonal relationships more important, more valuable, which makes the case even more for using the tech to take out the compliance piece so that you can focus on those higher value things. I mean, it's the same story that we've been saying. I just think that there's almost a fever pitch around AI. Like I noticed that I was at Bridging the Gap
Mhm.
and Scaling New Heights earlier in the summer. And I'm going to the Michigan Small Firm Conference in a few weeks, and they've
Yeah.
got AIs everywhere. Like that's all we're talking about at, conferences, it seems like, or at least that's like the top level thing that's getting people excited. Are you finding that too? I know you went to
Oh, absolutely.
AICA Engage,
Yeah,
so
everywhere across the board. Everybody wants to, everybody's talking about it. All the vendors are talking about it and talking about how it's part of their applications. And then, the
yeah,
CPAs themselves are trying to understand it. And, so you have a percentage of people, the real curious people that have taken the time over the last couple of years to learn about it and start to use it. But you got the vast majority of CPAs are still really, I think, trying to figure it out what it is. And, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was listening to one with Eric Schmidt, who's the former CEO of Google. So obviously he knows something
sure.
about the technology,
Yeah.
and he's all about AI. He's doing the whole circuit. He wrote a book with Henry Kissinger called Genesis about AI, because Henry
Did
Kissinger.
they really write it though? That's what I want to know.
Yes, they did. Yeah, in fact, well, it's all faith-based, right? I don't know. He said they did. He and Henry
Yeah.
Kissinger, they finished it a week before Henry Kissinger passed away at the age of, I think, 100 years old. But
Wow.
they were all about, talking about it at the, geopolitical level of AI. Um, but but one of the things he makes a point about in his conversations about AI is that he feels it's underhyped. And a lot of the AI leaders, outside of our profession, the AI
Yeah.
industry leaders will say basically the same thing, that this is coming and it's coming very quickly,
Yes.
in terms of, now we have this concept of agentic AI, which will do stuff for us. Generative AI
Yes.
just gave us information. We had to act upon it. Now the agentic AI is going to do it for us. And I totally agree to your point about the value of human interaction is going to go, up for sure. And I think the value of CPAs is going to go up as well for those who take advantage of the technology, going to the positive side of the technology, right? It can do all that busy work for us if we wanted to. Not all CPAs
Right.
wanted to do the busy work. Some of them like to do that busy work. But it's a generational thing to a certain extent as well. So it's, but I still say, I see this big tidal wave, and all the research I do on AI, I see this tidal wave of change coming, not 5 years out, not 10 years out. I'm
Yeah.
talking the next 1 to 3 years.
Yes.
And then I see our professionals like, what are you talking about, John? What are you even talking about?
Well, it's interesting you say that because about what are you talking about? Because when were at Bridging the Gap,
Yeah.
I intentionally sat at a table of firm owners, but also, practitioners that are working in firms, not necessarily owners.
Yeah.
For lunch, they had just gone to, I think it was Chad Davis's session on AI,
Hmm.
and most of them were like, that is just like way beyond anything that we could even dream of doing right
Hmm.
now. Like they're still trying to come to grips with using ChatGPT to write emails and
Yeah.
that. So I think we've always had a divide between obviously like the people who work at Google and like all of these tech companies they know way more than than we do, for better or for
Right.
worse.
Yeah.
But getting it, drilling it down, that technology into practical application, like in a business, from that perspective, I mean, it does, I have to just be honest, like scare me what's coming on the AI front because, I mean, we have no control over how this technology is going to be used right now. There's a lot of debate about do we need like a global consortium of, taking control over AI and how it's used. But, we can't solve that problem here. So let's talk about what we could potentially solve, which is how accountants should be approaching AI. Because I think, as you said, there's lots of vendors in the space who are baking AI right in. And you and I have talked previously about this, where I really think that's like the best place to start is with trusted solutions that are already using it for the things that your firm is looking to use it for. And would you agree with that still?
Yeah, the one maybe a caveat to that is that the big challenge always in software development is, you've got the traditional players like Wolters Kluwer and Thomson Reuters, and so they have
Mhm.
the infrastructure and they have, every incentive behind them to make sure this stuff is safe and secure, right?
Right.
But the result is they can't change as fast as the new startup, right? So you get a new startup
Yeah.
like our friends at Stanford Tax. Well, they start with a clean sheet of paper and they can take full advantage of the technology right out of the gate. So it's a big trade-off because most of the innovation I believe I see comes from the startups. But we want that trust and experience of a proven provider. And so that's, just a challenge for the providers to figure out how to deal with that.
Yeah. That's a good point. I do think though too, like to get traction. I saw one of the technologies I was kind of very intrigued with when I was at scaling was Puzzle. Have you heard of Puzzle?
I have not.
So Puzzle is basically a AI replacement for your general ledger. So it
Okay.
could be, could take out QuickBooks, it could take out Zero if you choose to do that. And I also think, not to lose the like broader market context in this discussion too, is these legacy providers, which QuickBooks still a legacy provider. I mean, they're also changing kind of the conversation with accountants. And so I think there is room in like at least in this next generation of like new accounting firm owners that they could just say, you know what, we're just going to start with something different or at least make
Yeah.
it a very big part of our practice. And I think that because they'll also be serving if they're doing, business accounting and working with businesses on tax, those people are also going to be open to doing something different and new. So I think it's not just the technology is going to be there. I think there's going to be a willingness to kind of carte blanche it, so to speak, and just, you know, if not run a parallel system to your legacy system, that might be a good place to start too, so that
Yeah,
you
well,
can
the
try
reality is
things
it
out.
kind of depends who your audience is, but I've always said for a number of years that if you want to really take full advantage of technology as a practitioner, your best bet is just to go out and start your own practice. Start carte blanche with a blank. It's hard, just like it is for Walters Kluwer's to make big
Yeah,
changes. It's hard for an existing CPA firm. And I saw an interesting comment from somebody who said, once you get to that like a 200 person organization, it's really not a team per se because you don't know the people in the organization. Whereas if you're in a 20 to 50 person firm, you'll know everybody to at least you'll know their
yeah,
names. And so that's kind of an interesting dynamic. And then we're in this whole age of entrepreneurship, which to me is exciting because I've been an entrepreneur my entire career. And,
yeah,
and so, now you have the ability to leverage this technology. There's great tools out there and you
yeah.
can pretty much do whatever you want to do.
Right. Yeah, and it's which is a good and a bad thing too, right? Like it's just I think it that also kind of brings it full circle back to the to trust, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's you look at some of the startup, whether it's software in the accounting profession or, businesses that seem to like start up like overnight and, can you really trust them. I mean, how much, I guess, road do you think accountants have right now to really embrace some of this AI before, you know, they start kind of falling, like really falling behind? And I don't want to like be the like alarm sounder
Right.
if it's not real, but it just seems to me that this is something like a shift. It's kind of like, oh, we choose not to use the internet, which, you know, I don't think too many firms do, though choose that route. Though I was just talking to somebody this week who was looking to acquire a firm, and this firm was still completely paper based.
Oh, yeah.
Like they were doing like literally hundreds of returns still, like on paper. It was unreal. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's the stat? Like 75% of the CPA profession is going to be retiring in the next 10 years or something to that
Yeah.
effect. It's a very short
Yeah.
window. And
Yeah.
so just by the nature of that, you're going to have a demand in the marketplace to leverage the technology more effectively.
And actually, speaking, I guess, of technology and succession planning. I mean, going back to this firm example where, you know, they were looking at making an offer on this firm, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's going to be like 50% of what it would be if they had like all the systems and like
Uh-huh.
staff who knew how to use technology
Yeah.
and everything. So that's also something to consider if you're looking to get out of your practice and you're not already getting it, you know, all of your tech systems in place, that's going to diminish the value of your firm. And it
Yeah,
just
yeah, I
will.
talk about that all the time because I do like a tech trends update and talk about different
Yeah,
technologies. I always emphasize that point that, as one of your incentives is to just increase the value of your practice because at some point you're going to want to exit out of it.
yeah,
And then, if I'm a buyer, if somebody's looking to buy a firm, I'd say, well, I don't know, do you really want to buy a firm? Why do you want to buy a firm? What you really want is either you want the staff or you want the
yeah,
clients. You don't want the systems. And so, maybe with the technology, there's other ways to build a practice
yeah.
than to buy it.
So as far as what you saw at AICPA Engage, was there any like big takeaways from like the tech vendor floor that or
Well,
sessions?
the
Oh,
biggest takeaway I always get is when I walk through the exhibit hall is it's like a huge conference. They have, I think, about 5,000 people there.
yeah,
And so they have two big exhibit halls. You walk down this, main hallway and there's a big exhibit on the left and one on the right. It's like you walk through, I get a headache because there's so
yeah, to
much.
do. Yeah.
And so it ends up being just a grab for good swag, because you don't have time to really talk to anybody. I mean, you could
Keep
talk
bring,
to him, but it's like, come on, he's like, how much can I really learn about your product? So maybe you can introduce your product, and
yeah,
hope you get a name. I'm talking from a vendor perspective now,
yeah,
and then have some follow up afterwards. But gosh, if you're a practitioner, it's all coming so fast and such and mass that's where those of us like you and I and all the others that are thought leaders and trying to help firms through this digital transformation, we have a responsibility to help them do it effectively, to not get
yes,
overwhelmed by all the solutions and, figure out what you want to do, figure out what you're already good at, figure out what you
yes,
already have in place as process, and let's take care of it piece by piece. It doesn't have to be a big old, total swap
yeah,
out of the technology infrastructure. If you've got a piece of the practice that's not working very well, focus on that. And things like just sending engagement letters for electronic signature. It's such a simple thing. Well, it's
yeah,
relatively simple. It's low-hanging fruit. Or password managers. I know a lot of practitioners just they don't do the simple things, and then they get all bunched up in the really tough stuff and
yeah.
disillusioned because it's hard to make big changes.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, it's not just about the technology. Even AI is not just about the technology. There's the change management piece for if not if you don't have a team, it's yourself as well. It's like it's easy to stay in the comfort zone for it's what is it? It's easy but hard later, right? If you just stay in the comfort zone without having a plan to move forward. And I think that's the biggest piece that firms should be looking at if you're going to conferences or you know, looking online or, you get the updates from any of the accounting trades, it's like, where do you begin? As you said, John, you begin with what it is that you want to be doing. Because
Yeah.
if you want to do advisory and you don't have the tools that are going to help you get there, and you don't know, if you don't put on paper or I like paper because it connects your brain and your hand, and I
Uh-huh.
still say that's really important,
Yeah.
at least for goal setting. It's
Uh-huh.
like if you could wake up like tomorrow and do what you wanted to be doing besides lying on the beach, but maybe that's an option too with some of this tech, like what would it be? And then you build this tech stack and swap things out to support that as opposed to all the shiny objects. I mean, as you were saying at, Engage, it's like a candy store. And
Yeah.
did you bring like an empty suitcase for all the swag or like,
No, I'm not big on all that. I did pick up some things for my niece though. They had a big gosh, I forget who it was. See how bad is it? I forget who it was, but they had a big old Legos uh
oh, that's Canopy probably.
I think it was Canopy. Yeah. I should know
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Canopy, Lego, and stickers. So when you go
Yeah.
to a conference, go get your Lego and stickers.
So I picked up a whole big of Lego pieces and gave them to my grandniece, actually, not my niece, my grandniece, and she loved it. That was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, actually, you'll get a kick out of this, no pun intended, actually, on several levels. The swag that I got from Bridging the Gap was from Tabs. Have you heard of Tabs?
No.
It's like revenue reconciliation
Oh, okay.
software.
Hmm.
But so they actually, I shouldn't mention the fact that they also had a Lego character, but it was a CFO. So it could go and sit in the Canopy Lego office. Um, but what I picked up were some very nice EMU green, which is Eastern Michigan
Yeah.
University green
Uh-huh.
socks with white tabs on them, and I gave them to my daughter who's going to be going there in the fall. So
Nice.
yeah. So now the vendors know this is what we do, but maybe she'll meet somebody in accounting and be able to show her the cool socks or something
There you
like
go.
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So back to your
yeah.
point though, when you go into these conferences and the exhibit halls, the more you can go there proactive with a purpose and proactively knowing what you're looking for, then you can kind of control
Hmm.
your agenda in the exhibit halls, as opposed to just
Yeah,
getting caught up in the emotion of the most attractive vendor booths and stuff like that.
I know. Or the snacks or whatever it might be.
Yeah, the snacks.
So I guess as far as even like outside of conferences, I mean, what would be your like key takeaways at this point for firms? I mean, obviously depending on what they want to be doing. I mean, are there things that you think firms should drop or look at transitioning from? I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I was just curious what
Well,
your
I think
thoughts are.
that this whole conversation that we've had for many years now about client
Hmm.
advisory services, and that, of course, kind of means two things. One is the whole like cloud-based bookkeeping and payroll service model, and the other is the true advisor. Um, one of the challenges always has been for firms is, okay, well, how do I become an advisor? Not the client accounting service model, but the advisory service. And now with AI, you really have a nice tool that can help you become more of an advisor incrementally. The things we've talked about in previous podcasts, like taking a tax return and anonymizing it and saying, help me identify things that I could recommend to the client. Or, here's the profile of the client. Maybe the client's looking to buy a new building or a new business. AI can be a great resource to help you understand the implications of buying that business, what you should look for, what you should look out
Hmm.
for. And so it can help you to be a more confident advisor because you're going to still be the face and the professional
Right.
that the client trusts, but the tool is there. And so that's what, I would definitely encourage practitioners, don't get too caught up in the AI hype, but you got to get into it too. You can't sit on the sidelines. So you got to start
Yeah.
using it and just, learn how to ask it questions. And I joke these days because it's all this conversation about being a good prompt engineer, and you really got to learn how to
Oh,
build
right.
a prompt. And I say you really don't need to learn how to build a prompt. What you need to learn how to do is to ask the AI, how do I build the prompt? So that's what I've been doing the
Mm.
last 6 months is instead of trying to knock my head
There you
against,
go.
I say, here's what I want to do. I want to buy this business and here's my,
Yeah.
background. What should I be asking you, AI? And it'll tell you what questions you should ask it. Then you go back and ask those questions and it works
Yeah.
really well.
That's brilliant. And, to the same point, I'm a trained coach. And so it's like coaching is all about asking the right questions, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, that's like the biggest part of it so that you can get underneath things and like figure out what's really there. And I would
Yeah.
say like with AI, one of the things that I like doing with it is asking it what I'm missing. So
There you go.
it's
Perfect.
like, here I've got this, which I probably, some of it may have been created by AI. It's like, okay, if I'm such and such, such, what's missing out of here?
Yeah.
And it will often bring to light, different dimensions that you don't necessarily think of. And that's, I guess, the beauty and also the human factor that you need is being able to discern what's really important that is coming out of some of these engines too.
Right. And especially for like solopreneurs, sole practitioners, like kind of you and I are like
Mhm.
that. It's a great resource. It's like a partner in your business that you can bounce ideas off of and
Yeah,
brainstorm with, and can
yeah.
fill a gap that a lot of smaller firms particularly don't have direct access to.
Well, that goes back to your point off the top that some kids might have AI as their best friend, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I still value all of my colleagues that I see at conferences and talk to online, and that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same, and I think most people, in our roles do. That's why we're in
Yeah,
those roles, actually.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's different when you're growing up today when you're born with a screen in your hand.
Yeah, well, there's I would say too on like that note, just it's all what you allow yourself to get used to and I think that goes for technology as well. So
Yep. Yep.
it's definitely it can certainly be a big lift and a big help in firms. But at the end of the day, going right back to the burnout and mental health conversation we were having, at the top, it's how much time do you want to be spending like doing what you're doing? That's also a fair question to ask. And then how can the technology help free you as well so that you could actually go outside and put grass under your feet every once in a while?
Yeah, just one last point on the whole burnout issue is one of the on the first day of the pre-conference, the CPA practice advisor had their thought leader meet up
Mm.
with the 40 under 40 leaders.
Okay.
So that's
Yep.
always I enjoy that because I get to really learn what the younger people are thinking and what's important to them and so forth. But we had a little presentation from Ed Kless
Oh yeah.
and Ron Baker. They've started a
Okay.
new organization called Threshold. I don't know if
Oh
you're familiar with it. And
no.
so Ed shared this white paper that the two of them put together, and their whole point is about burnout. It's all about burnout, this new organization, but their premise is that burnout is not really because you're overworked. It's because you're not working towards your purpose is, whatever your purpose may
Oh,
be.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's very very interesting
Totally
what
see
they're
that.
what they're put together. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that can get lost in the conversation about technology. I know I'm actually working on something uh with AI. The tech
right.
is really only 10% of it. I mean, you've got to really look at some, other things, one of them being like do you want to use the tech to be doing what you're doing? Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's somebody came to, I did a panel at Bridging the Gap on return on relationship. And somebody in the like audience actually just said, I am just so, expletive tired. I just,
Uh-huh.
I think there's like, we did a show of hands and like, people are just tired.
Yeah.
And I think there's also been a race towards, oh, you've got to scale, you've got to keep improving, you've got to keep pushing, pushing, pushing. And I think it's okay to say, I just want to have what I have,
Right.
at least for now,
Mhm.
and fine tune it. And if my clients are happy, I'm happy, or my team's happy, and we're making like decent amount of money,
Hmm.
that's good.
Yeah.
There's let's uh let's have some sanity and streamline some things and do what we want to do and how we want to serve our clients best. I think that that gets lost sometimes too in this like race that we've
Yeah.
got to like one up everything.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think kind of liking or wanting what you have is like really important. Instead of always
It
thinking
is.
about the future, because thinking about the future can be very stressful, right? How do I prepare for this, especially now with things moving so fast?
Yeah. Well, I think going to conferences sometimes gives you not going to conferences. Like somebody actually said on stage at Bridging the Gap, like, everybody take a picture of this and post it so that other people have FOMO and they'll come next year. And I'm like, okay. So there's a psychological element that can't be underestimated. And I
Uh,
think,
Yeah.
you know, I really salute the people who are in their firms doing the day-to-day, looking after their clients,
Yes.
because those are the people that really like I think our YouTube show here is for. And also like there's a very small sub segment of people who are going to conferences, and that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
education is so important, but being able to bring it to people who aren't going to conferences because they're like busy serving their people or they don't have the budget or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I
Great point.
think it's important to know that like doing what you're doing today is still valuable. It's just make sure that you're going to be able to keep doing what you want to be doing or
Right.
finding something different and then use the tools to help you get there.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
So,
On that point, we
okay.
probably better wrap so our audience can get back to serving their clients.
That's right. Well, we can also make this shorter. We'll speed it up, play it on like 1.25 or 1.5, or we'll
Yeah.
make some shorts out of it. But I think it's a good conversation to have, especially as
Absolutely.
people are hopefully taking some time off during the summer months. And it's always good to do that so that your brain can think outside the office.
Yeah. Get recharged for sure.
Yep. All right. Well, good stuff. Thanks, John.
Okay. Thank you, Gaynor. Good talking.
Yep. All right.